O- Okay, I'm jumping in. 45 minutes goes by pretty fast, so I'm just going to kick this off. I'll say good morning, everyone. I know there's stiff competition here among programs, not to mention the many delights of Charleston itself. So thanks for coming, and we're going to try to put on a good show for you. So I'm Mark Sandler. I'm director of the CIC Center for Library Initiatives, and I don't want to waste time trying to explain to you what that is. So we'll someday you can look that up. But I'll say on a personal note, I'm 69 years old. The oldest person at the fun run on Thursday morning, 6:30 a.m. And I actually have a retirement date in sight now on Leap Day coming up in February. And once you get to that point in life, you start to think about how libraries could possibly survive without me. Going forward, and how will the Charleston conference, ever draw a crowd or be, manage to put on all these programs if I'm not there to babble on through them. So, for all of you out there who've been sharing my angst about whether this is the end of time, I guess I'm really delighted for the opportunity that Katina gave me to pull together this program and reassure everyone that we're in good hands and there are bright days ahead for our library and publishing space. So I'm very thankful for some of my younger professional friends here who have agreed to come and talk about how the present day workplace feels for them as some of our younger colleagues and how they're scoping their very long futures in this scholarly information space. So I'll just call out names here. To my left, Maurer, who's a spatial and numeric data librarian at the University of Michigan. Jen Maurer, who's a library sales rep at Cambridge University Press. Hannah Scates Kettler, who's a digital humanities librarian at University of Iowa, and Dan Valen, who's a product specialist at Figshare. So I asked these folks to avoid PowerPoint and just approach this as a conversation. But first, I'm going to ask each of you folks to just take a few minutes to introduce yourselves and sort of tell us about your current positions and how it is that you sort of got to the, how it is that you came to this industry and space and kinds of work that you're doing now, and in what ways the roles that you've played to date have and haven't lived up to your expectations. So, with that, let me ask Maurer to come up first and do a little intro. Thanks, Maurer.
Thanks, Mark. Morning, everybody. As Mark said, I am Maurer, and I came to this scholarly information space through an interest and love for research, which I always... Oh, too short. Can everybody hear me now? Thanks. So I came to the scholarly information space through a love of research. I always loved doing research in the library. And after completing my bachelor's degree, I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and I ended up in an office job in the public sector, and I found it mind-numbingly boring. And so I really knew I needed something that was going to be more intellectually engaging and something that would have a lot of variety and excitement and change. And so I ended up in library school, and I expected this kind of profession in this area to be something that would have a lot of change and something that would really keep me engaged. As a researcher, I'd already seen databases go from command line searching to graphical user interface searching. So, I saw some of that already from the outside. And I've had kind of two main trajectories in my career so far. And the first is a move to increasingly larger research institutions. And the second is a move from social science librarianship to data librarianship. So my first job out of library school was at a small liberal arts college as a social science librarian. And I would say that that job to a T met my expectations about what a library job would be in terms of instruction and research consultations and title by title selection for collection development. And I liked that job, and there was a lot of, embeddedness with the campus and one-on-one contact with students and faculty. But after doing that for a while, I really wanted to move to an institution where there would be heavier duty research and meatier research. And I also had some responsibilities for data in that role and really liked them and wanted to have more of that. I wanted to do more of that. So I made a move to a smaller ARL library, to a role that had both liaison responsibilities to the social sciences as well as a defined data role. And as part of that job, I also was assigned to learn geographical information systems and support geospatial data from the library. And as part of that work, it really expanded what I thought library work could and should be into this new area that was really exciting. And so it changed my assumptions a little bit. And after doing that for a while, I liked everything I was doing, but I wanted a more narrow focus where I could really develop deeper expertise in some of the areas I was working in, which is how I ended up in my current role at the University of Michigan as a spatial and numeric data librarian, which feels like a pretty good fit in terms of I'm kept busy just like I wanted to be, but I have a narrow enough focus that I have a chance to be good at what I'm doing. And I would say I always wanted to work at a big research institution. I thought it would be the most exciting collections, the most interesting research on campus that you'd get to work with, and the most resources to do projects through the library. And I would say that has definitely met my expectations in my role so far. But I did along the way find a lot of valuable things about working at smaller institutions that I didn't necessarily expect in terms of engagement that doesn't scale as well to a larger institution. It's harder to replicate there. But I am so fortunate where I am now, both in terms of financial resources, but also resources in my colleagues and the things available to me on campus. And I really value those things, but kind of naively, what I didn't expect would come with that would be the larger bureaucracy that goes with a larger library and a larger institution. And so I've had to adjust my skills in terms of navigating those types of structures as something that I just consider part of my job. And that's something that I didn't expect but have learned along the way. So that's kind of the rough outline of how I got here. And I would say what I wanted was to not be bored, and I'm definitely not bored. And I do not expect to be bored going forward. So I really love that. Thank you.
My name is Jennifer Maurer. I am a library sales rep at Cambridge University Press. I wish that my entrance into the publishing world were quite as rich as Mara's, but I came in via Craigslist. I took a year off after I graduated, did some retail for a year, and thought it's probably time for a 9-to-5 job. I went to Craigslist and thought, Spanish and music degree, how about administrative assistant? Editorial assistant sounded kind of interesting. I sent in my resume to Springer, and that's kind of how I started. I've done a few different things. I've worked at a few different places. I've been in this world about almost 7 years now, but as I mentioned, started out at Springer in editorial, and then moved to an account development role at Springer, which was, I think it's still evolving, but the best way I'll describe it is a little bit of marketing, a little bit of sales, some post-sale support, some training support, but after that, I think how I've made my changes through the different roles that I've had has been somewhat influenced by personal choices, and not necessarily not feeling fulfilled in the roles that I've had. But after Springer, I moved to Columbus, Ohio for a year, worked at OCLC, which was really interesting, and then just simply missed home, which is New York. So I started at Cambridge in sales. I think one of the things that I really appreciate about this industry is the ability to try new things and to move around pretty seamlessly. The fact that things are changing so rapidly really presents a lot of opportunity that, to just try something, and if you don't like it, try something else. And I think that's been one of the most exciting things to be a part of this field. What keeps me here and still trying new things within publishing is simply the people. Everyone I meet is very interesting and pretty willing to talk and share their story, and that's probably why I've sort of evolved into a sales role. I think it really affords the opportunity to listen and make some good connections. And I think that's sort of what's guided my path thus far. So I'm really happy to be here today, and I am, excited and a little surprised to see how many people are in the room. But it's great. Thanks so much for being here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Scates Kettler. I am the Digital Humanities Research and Instruction Librarian at the University of Iowa Libraries, DH Librarian for much shorter. I'm a part of the Digital Studio, we just recently changed our name, the Digital Scholarship and Publishing Studio, which was recently formed in the libraries. Previously, it was two different departments. One within the library called Digital Research and Publishing, for which I worked for, and another group called the Digital Studio for Public Arts and Humanities, which was supported outside of the library by the provost, and those two merged quite recently. And I did work for that one as well. So a little bit of outside, inside of the library. Previous to that, actually, I was an archaeologist for a few years, so there's a kind of a non-traditional background there. So my day-to-day actually includes consulting and research on various different methodologies and platforms, active development as a partner on digital projects that come from our students and faculty, or building out resources for projects instigated by other librarians. So a little internal, external work there. Sometimes we publish those projects as part of our digital library, in our institutional repository as part of our digital editions, which are kind of standalone digital monographs, if you will. In addition to the research, development, and publishing role I kind of hold, I act as one of the touch points for the different departments on campus that work with digital scholarships, such as ITS, informatics, advanced technology and research groups, student organizations, and academic departments, as well as a conduit for internal library resources, including our special collections, preservation, conservation, and our subject librarians. So there's a lot of talking, which I actually enjoy, and a lot of meeting new people as they come in. The reason I got into this work was I was quite interested in differentiated learning and teaching. I'm very much a visual learner, and a lot of archaeology is text-based, and I didn't actually get a lot out of that, so I started creating 3D reconstructions so I could learn. And so the idea was then, how is this supported within my library resource as an archaeologist? How can I use the library to access these different types of information? And that's where I started my interest there, and I submitted some 3D reconstructions I did as an undergrad to my institutional repository. And at that time, I actually didn't know anything about proprietary formats, so I submitted something that no one else could open or use. The librarians at the time didn't know anything about 3D, and so they took it and thought it was fine. They did realize after I left that you couldn't open it, and that was a problem. Thankfully, after I got my master's degree from King's College in Digital Humanities, I did come back and started working for the same library. And I got a chance to redo that, and now it's in a PDF format, which makes way more sense. So I've been working in the library now for about 3 years. In my position, I'm actually allowed a fair amount of latitude. In the past 3 years, I wrote the job description, so it was kind of nice. It lived up to my expectations, as you might imagine. But there were some things that did catch my attention, which was I felt that I wanted to be a part of this new cutting-edge proactive development for digital resources, and there were structures in place, like Maurer mentioned, structures, traditions, bureaucracy, that kind of retarded that development a little bit. At the same time, these structures did provide, a comfort, a thoughtfulness in how we develop our resources so that we can reach the largest group possible. So I guess there's a checking of my idealism in free technology, and we're going to move this in 2-week scrums, if you know what that is, agile development, that kind of stuff. So there's a little bit of checking that. At the same time, it hasn't really been hampered too much. There's a lot of openness that I found within the library that has been uplifting. So that's kind of my background and how I got into this, and I really like it, actually.
Hello. My name is Dan Valen. I am the product specialist at Figshare, and product specialist is vague by design because I'm also the only full-time North American employee for Figshare. And I handle a lot of already been asked twice before I even got up here. It's a research data platform to make the other outputs of the research process openly available. So you can build on top of research and make science go further faster. That's the short and sweet version of it. But I actually got started in publishing about 7.5 years ago. At Springer, and similar to Jen, I graduated with a degree in English and economics and didn't really know what I was going to do with that. And Springer was actually the first place that called me back. I had an interview and a job offer out of college about a month after I graduated. So I moved up to New York City, and I spent a few years in editorial and then moved into the trade side of things, which was working with print, and then finished out my time working as working in licensing, so licensing out electronic content to university libraries, which is how I really got exposed to this space. And Mark actually held a similar session when I was at Springer, where he brought a bunch of early career professionals from the CIC and a bunch of folks from Springer and put them in a room and said, all right, let's talk things out. And when I was actually working at Springer at that time, I was working with what we called the college market, which is kind of your non-traditional customers for a huge STEM publisher. And I was excited to be able to go and talk to all these Big Ten schools and see, like, what do they have to say about these huge publishers, and see what their feedback was. And everyone was just talking about open access, and I was like, whoa, there's a pretty big disconnect here to what I was coming at this from and what the younger librarians are thinking about. And so I started looking at alternate business models and different ways to think about this, and actually was an advisor for a company called ReadCube, sat on their advisory board. And that's kind of how I found my way into the digital science world. One of the founders of ReadCube asked me to pull together a business plan, and I was just like, I have never been asked to do that. I have no idea how to do that. So about 2 years ago, November, I met with somebody from digital science at a coffee shop, and I also was at the end of November, and it was full-on Movember mode, and I had a giant mustache, and it was really embarrassing. But I was there to talk with him about ReadCube and this idea of like a new business model and like how do we fix things, and all he could do was talk about Figshare. And I'm like, what is a Figshare? So We actually spent about 3.5 hours chatting, and I really wanted to get involved, and that's kind of where I landed now. And it's great. I truly believe that in your professional life, you should do business with people who believe what you believe. And now when I go and talk to universities and talk about open access and open science and how to facilitate that, there are a lot of nodding heads, and it's ways to change this and take it forward. So it's super exciting. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So.
Okay, so you're feeling optimistic now, like I promised. So, some of the things these folks have in common is, they're young and smart and articulate and, by my reckoning, incredibly poised and just full functioning information professionals. But I wanted to, just as a first question to you all, drill down and look at some of the differences between you. So Dan and Jen, for lack of a better word, are working on the quote-unquote vendor side of our space, and Hannah and Maurer working on the library side. And I wonder if you guys could talk a little bit about how you think your workplaces are doing at assimilating younger workers and bringing them along.
I guess I'll start. It's pretty good from a Figshare perspective. Is this on? How's this? Oh, hey. Okay. Yeah, right. It's interesting because no one at Figshare right now is over the age of 40. So it really does foster to younger group of individuals, and we also have pretty much a flat structure, so everyone's input is really valued, which is something that I really appreciate coming from a much larger entrenched industry. So the fact that we all can share these ideas and they're all heard, I mean, we do have one ultimate decider if we hit a blocker, but for the most part it's really accommodating to the younger crowd, for sure. So, some of you at more venerable institutions want to take a crack?
I guess I would say working with a large institution where there's a much more mixed demographic age-wise than Figshare, there's a tradition, I think, of fostering kind of young voices, if you will, early career, I guess, voices, and trying to get their input, especially as they're, I think, energizing, say, kind of a new influx to the gene pool, and they do listen, but whether or not things get acted upon, I think has less to do with a hindrance because of the age difference. I think it's more either traditions or, well, mostly the bureaucracy, right? They get heard, but they also need, the top brass, the typically older generation to kind of root for those things as well. So it's not that their voices aren't heard, there just has to be a few more voices added to it that I think help kind of accreditate that kind of input.
You want to go?
Sure. I'll echo a little bit what Hannah said, where in all of my roles I felt very empowered with my own time and things that only involved me, but that when it went beyond that and involved other people or other resources, that was a different thing to navigate, and it depends on the institution a lot. And a little bit that I alluded to before in bureaucracy, it's really, can you figure that out? Can you make it work for what you're doing? But I would say that's in some ways equal opportunity for all ages, but it does require kind of a bigger buy-in from a bigger group of people.
So I think to piggyback off of that just a little bit, you know, I think that one of the challenges and I'm speaking across sort of all three organizations that I've been part of, which have all been pretty big, well-established, you know, across the age demographic. I think that one of the challenges is, you know, finding those opportunities for empowerment and making sure that, you know, when you are in your own space, when you do have that, you know, you do have the opportunity to grow, that you're really seizing upon that opportunity, even if it might not appear that it's immediately an opportunity to do that. I think that also it's not, you know, we're sort of talking around this like young versus more seasoned thing, and I truly believe that something that young people, or at least myself, I feel like I have learned and continue to learn is there's something to learn from everybody that you meet. So whether it's your more seasoned colleague who is a little bit harder to work with, there's a learning opportunity there. You know, your younger colleague who's really excited to hear your ideas and is willing to let you fly and do what they, you know, they see that you can. They're ready to give you the space to do that, but it's just, you know, making sure that we're kind of listening across the spectrum and not cutting ourselves off too soon, too. I hope that makes sense, but yeah.
Back to the more seasoned moderator. I will just to drill down just one more layer on this theme. Dan and Jen, or actually all of you, you know, do you have like startup envy, Silicon Valley envy, Google envy? You know, do you have a sense, you know, about the difference between sort of working in these younger, freer organizations, you know, where you just see people, you know, hanging around ping pong tables and, you know, and playing beach volleyball and, you know, as compared to these, you know, a much more established organization with some of the street cred that comes with, you know, a venerable imprint or, you know, just, you know, a 200-year tradition and a football team at a university. So do you want to just comment on that about, you know, as you're sort of walking around Brooklyn or walking around Iowa City, you know, do folks look and go, oh, yeah, you should be out there working in you know, on the West Coast, or, you know, do you feel pretty good about how these other what these, I guess, more established organizations offer younger folks?
Well, even when I was at Springer, people said I looked like I should be working at a startup. They had a nickname for me there. But I saw a panel a couple months ago where people are kind of talking about innovation and why innovation doesn't happen as much as it should in this space. And in my time spent at Springer, there's this idea that this is the way we do things. We can be a little bit flexible in either way, but this is the way it's kind of always been done. We can introduce new models, but it's still, you know, this is where we're at. And with the whole idea of the startup, it does allow you to be more nimble and to have a little bit more mobility and change directions on what your focus is, build new tools faster. I think the analogy that was used that really stuck with me was there's not a lot of innovation in publishing because that's like asking Hilton to create Airbnb. If the business model's working, why would they change? So from that standpoint, I think it really enables you to grow faster and make different changes to kind of disrupt what is happening, what is the status quo. So you have the big thing that works really well and well-oiled machine, and then you have the crazy kids who have all these ideas that are seen as radical, and you kind of have to wedge yourself in there and show through your hard work that you can actually change things. So,
Jen, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot here, but you work at you know, what a 500-year-old imprint, Cambridge University Press. I think they say they published the books that Adam and Eve were reading. So you know, I know it's been. Can you say something nice about you know, what it means to go into an office like that you know has that kind of history?
I'm just going to take this out. I think it might be easier if we do it that way. Or maybe not. Maybe not. I think that being around people who have been around is actually a really good learning experience. There are challenges. I think one of the hurdles that I think that I've had to go through in each place I've been, I won't just limit it to Cambridge, but you know, getting over the perception that as a young person, I think that I know it all. And I don't feel that way. I don't approach my job that way. But I know that there's a period of adjustment, and it's about building trust and helping your colleagues around you get to know who you are, and helping them feel comfortable with the level of experience that you do have. And you know, sometimes there are things that I might have just a better handle of because I've done it differently. But it takes time. I don't think I'm at a disadvantage by being where I am. I think it's actually a pretty interesting challenge trying to navigate the space I'm in. And you know, if I were so miserable, then I think you have to find the good in the experiences that you're in, regardless of whether it's the glamorous job that you think you should have or the one that you find yourself in. So, you know, I guess I'm sort of touching on the am I jealous of cool startup companies? Not really. It'd be cool. Maybe someday. I don't think that I'm at any disadvantage to be where I am right now. It's all a growth opportunity. So.
Nice. So, you want this one, Maurer?
Sure, I just had a quick thought. One is that I'm not jealous of the volleyball because I'm terrible at it. But the second is that in the library, what I envy a little bit about those companies, especially some larger technology companies, is that they have a little leeway to fail in projects that we don't necessarily feel like we have in the library, where I feel like we're trying new things, but there's a lot of pressure for them all to succeed, and that is kind of a lot to take on as a librarian, as an individual in the library.
Interesting. So here's an unhappy thought for you, but you know, probably 2045, 2050, 30, 35 years from now, you're still going to be dragging your sorry selves to Charleston and this conference. So what do you think those programs are going to look like then? What's the space going to look like? You know, are librarians and publishers still going to be, you know, jabbing at each other about price and terms? Is Silicon Valley, you know, just going to be all over that exhibit space, and a whole lot of these much more established conceptions of libraries and publishing houses will have pretty much, you know, receded into past memory? What's your sense of Charleston 2050?
Do you want to go? I can go. Okay. No, you go.
Okay. Well, I was just going to speak a little bit towards, 2050. I will probably have a cane at something. But I think the Charleston conference itself will still be, you know, relevant and useful. In terms of like library spaces, I'm drawing off my experience at the University of Iowa Libraries, where we're actually in the process of renovating quite a bit of the space to reflect what the students have been asking for. Which is, you know, collaborative spaces, access to digital material, which may or may not link back to our physical collections, more openness with, you know, the special collections, group study space, that kind of stuff. So I think libraries will kind of continue to evolve to reflect this kind of knowledge creation that I think is being called for, as opposed to just a place to find the knowledge. It's actually going to be a place to actually generate and collaborate and come together. So I think it's happening now, and I think it'll continue to happen. As we know, it takes a little while. Not only because of what, the expectations of what a library is and how that changes and how quickly that might change, but also then, you got to have the funds for it, the space for it, et cetera. So I think it'll kind of continue to evolve in this kind of, what I see is a very positive kind of space where people can come together and talk about, hard issues, can create projects or exposés, if you will, installations that speak to these harder issues that bring different types of people together in the same space. Because I think the library is seen as a meeting place of a lot of different diverse kind of disciplines, just naturally because we house books and things that are from different disciplines, but now it's becoming this place where those disciplines could actually meet. And I think it'll continue to evolve that way.
Yeah, I think one thing that Hannah said that really resonated with me is the idea of the library to help foster creation of content. And so not necessarily library as publisher, I'm not going to go down that road, but the idea that I had the benefit of being able to visit Hunt Library at NCSU. And if you don't know what that is, you should look it up. It's one of the most inspiring spaces that you can go to if you are super into libraries. But it's the whole idea of helping foster creation amongst the researchers and having librarians kind of move into a non-traditional role of capturing this content and moving it along. And you'll still have those parts of the library, the archiving, the preservation, being the voice of record. But libraries have the benefit of, in almost every campus that I visit, of being located smack dab in the center of campus. So it's always the whole idea of the open door policy. This is where knowledge should be generated. How do you use technology to leverage that? How do you empower libraries and librarians to kind of shift their focus and really engage with their faculty, with their staff, with the researchers? So I kind of see a future where, I can throw out open access and go down that road as well. But it is this whole idea of open knowledge, because the internet has really democratized pretty much everything except for academia, and it's ironic because it came out of academia. So how do you use tools to create efficiencies, make content openly available, and collaborate across universities, across countries?
So I definitely want to leave a few minutes for you all, although there weren't too many minutes to divvy up. But let me toss out one last question, and that is, if your bosses were to toss you the keys on Monday morning and say, here you drive, what do you think would make your respective institutions stronger and more vital in the lives of students, researchers, authors, scholars? What's on your mind that you would really like to take the reins and do sooner rather than later?
I guess I'll start. The thing that's really occupying my mind right now is, well, it's still 3D. We're still trying to figure that out. But by extension, just like how do we preserve, present, and publish different types of data that don't fall within the norm, non-textual, visual data, experiential data, that kind of stuff.
So I'm so excited to answer this question because I am working on that project currently, and it's happening. And that is for across the CIC, a collaborative discovery portal for geospatial data and scanned maps. And we have 9 institutions working on it right now. I just came from that meeting, and when I started this job that I have, it was my hope that something like this would happen, and it's happening, and it's what I would have done if I could, and I can, so it's really amazing.
So I think I would love to see some better mechanisms for feeding some of these great projects that are going on in our libraries back into an organization like Cambridge, and I won't even say it's just Cambridge specific, but I think the danger in big established organizations is that we think we know, and there's just, one of the greatest things about coming to this conference is having conversations with folks like the people to my right and left and seeing that there are some really cool things happening out there. How can we figure out how to partner differently, partner better? And I think that there's real opportunity for us to facilitate those conversations differently, facilitate them better, facilitate them at all. So I think that's something that I would be really interested in pursuing Monday morning at 9:30.
And it's something that Maurer said earlier, the whole idea of being willing to try things and fail. It's something that I've really had to get used to doing because our founders pretty much said I can run and do what I need to do. So there aren't really that many restrictions. It's the whole idea of figuring out how to, pursue our mission. And so the scariest thing for me is failing, I guess. But yeah, I like that I'm able to kind of take this idea forward and run with it. It's pretty liberating and equally scary.
Nice. We have 3-4 minutes, so it's going to be kind of a lightning round. But if some of you have some questions or even a comment, there's a mic in the middle of the room, but you have to give us your name before you start speaking.
Bob Schatz with Biomed Central. Listening to you suggests that you're all self-made, if you will, to where you got to, and I'm wondering if any of you benefited from a mentor or a role model who imparted some knowledge or values to you that helped you get to the successful place that you're at now, and if so, what was the nature of what they imparted to you that you were able to benefit from?
Nice.
So I'm going to be perfectly honest. I've had a real hard time finding a good mentor along the way. I don't know why that is. I think maybe it's a matter of being able to ask someone, or just simply saying, "Will you be my mentor?" I've definitely had people around me who have been in different ways have taught me a lot. But that role of mentorship is really interesting, and I'm not really sure that I've encountered the right way to cultivate that relationship with one specific person. I'm still looking. And that's not, again, that's not to say that the people around me haven't taught me something, but I think that's been maybe one of the things that's surprised me about being young in my career, is that it's just been a little bit harder than I would have thought. So,
I guess kind of going off what you say, Jen, that I never asked for a mentor, probably because I didn't know I could. You don't quite know, especially starting out, who's okay with being a mentor, Thank you. But at the same time, by asking questions, I kind of started feeling out who was okay with me asking questions, and a lot of them. And I think it's just kind of evolved from there. And to be frank, without those people's support, I wouldn't have this job. So they actually took it upon themselves to advocate for me and for my position and for my department. But so there was a little bit of me constantly barraging them with questions and developing a relationship that way. But at the same time, they took it upon themselves as well, seeing a need and filling that.
I would say I absolutely have had wonderful mentors in the field and have been really grateful for that. And it's always been people who took an interest and made it known that they were available for that kind of support. So it's great as we go forward to keep in mind to do that ourselves.
Yeah, and I've also been fortunate enough to have surrounded myself with a group of really, really good people from Springer and even now where I'm at. I wouldn't say there's just one person, but I've definitely had a lot of help from a lot of different people. So for that, I really thank them.
So folks told me the greatest sin here is running long, so I just can't do that. And I'm really sorry that we didn't squeeze in another question or two, although I thought Bob's question about mentors was just a great one to build on. I guess I started at the outset saying that I thought we would bring some optimism and that you would leave here feeling hopeful. So show of hands, did we get there? Yeah, you're feeling pretty good about these folks, I hope? Yes? Okay. So, Maurer, Hannah, Dan, Jen, thank you so much for doing this. Really, it is a privilege knowing you guys, and now there's a couple hundred other people, I hope, who recognize that too. So, thank you all very much for coming and doing this.